This is Real Talk, the customer insights show with Jenn Vogel. Join Jenn and her guests for this live discussion around topics that will help you understand your customers better. Also available on podcast channels. This live stream is presented to you by Voxpopme, the leader in video research. Here's today's live conversation.
Hello, insights professionals, marketers, and everyone who wants to understand their customers better. I'm Jenn Vogel, and today I'm joined by Jude Olinger of the Olinger Group. Voxpopme has partnered with Jude's company to marry video surveys with augmented reality in market research. I'm really excited to have this conversation today on Real Talk, the Customer Insights Show. Welcome to the show, Jude.
Hey, Jenn, thanks. Thanks for having me. Good seeing you again.
Yeah, great to see you. Really excited to talk about AR in market research. But before we kind of get into the topic for today, just to get started, can you tell us a little bit about the Olinger Group and the partnership with Voxpopme?
Sure. Well, the Olinger Group, we're a full-service firm that's been around for about 30 years or so. And we do work across a lot of sectors. So, having been in business for that long, we've touched a lot of different industries. And we mostly work with Fortune 2000, Fortune 5000, bigger entities nationwide. And, because we've done it for so long, we've seen just about every research need, every research question, many of them multiple times over and over again. And, I guess a little more about us real quick is we're known for our innovative approaches to problems and our obsession with responsiveness and customer experience for our own customers. And also, we're also well known because we have a lot of security certification, which matters to many of our clients who are in areas where they're dealing with sensitive data. And then the partnership with Voxpopme came about. I was recalling this. Dave Carruthers came to our office many years ago and met with my team, and I was here, and I said, I'm too busy to meet with that guy. Little did I know that I would keep seeing him over and over and over again throughout the years. But he came here to our office in New Orleans, and we've been a client for several years. And, the partnership in terms of the augmented reality offering is something that we're always looking for new and innovative tools to be able to bring to our clients so that we can better answer their questions, have more tools, be able to offer more solutions to them.
Absolutely. And this, the market research industry is constantly evolving. As I'm sure I've seen, new methodologies and new technology become available. Every year there's something new or some new buzzword that people are talking about, and some of it actually sticks and lands and some of it goes away. But it's great to see, I think sometimes there's a lot of conversation about a shift away from supported and to this sort of DIY, but there's really a middle ground, it sounds like, and the full service firms like yourself that are focused also on innovation are the ones that are really finding a lot of success.
Yeah, we're a professional services business, and I've been in this industry for almost 35 years, and had my company almost 30. And the more things change, the more they stay the same, because at the end of the day, tools and technology are fantastic, and we've made leaps and bounds from when I started in the industry in terms of the kinds of tools that we have. But the science is essentially the same. I mean, understanding human behavior and attitudes and opinions, and the ways that we do that. But what's also, the thing that we bring, I think, and firms like mine bring, is that you still have to have a human being think through these problems. And has to, we're a professional services provider who the technology oftentimes is great, but it doesn't do it itself. Even when it's a DIY thing, someone still has to do it, right? It just doesn't happen on its own. So you have to have someone who does the thinking, and that's where we fit in and where we play.
Yeah, it's important to have that layer of it. You can't just rely on the technology alone, that's for sure. So let's jump into the augmented reality stuff. And before we kind of take a look back at some of the work we've done together, let's look forward a bit. Like, what do you think is the future of augmented reality in market research?
I think that there could be a very bright future for this technology, right? But I think the jury is still out. And as you said, and I was gonna mention, I've seen a lot of things come and go, and
Mm.
some stick, and some things stick, and some don't. And then there are things that I hadn't even conceived of that kind of come out of the blue. So, I've seen things come and go, but I think that AR has potential, and I'll give you sort of an example as to why I think it does, and also why it's still the jury is out. About 4 years or so ago, we thought virtual reality or VR had great potential. And we partnered with someone who was doing it, one of the big providers in our industry who wasn't an obvious player, but they had figured this thing out. And we ran around the country for probably 6 months visiting clients. We were demonstrating to different people, mall companies, retailers, pharmacies, grocery operators, hospital companies, hoteliers, and hospitality companies. And I thought, this stuff is fantastic. And they thought it was great too. That was super cool. But there were some challenges. And, one of the challenges is that clients aren't always willing to take a chance. It was something new and different. And they were hesitant to necessarily take a chance on doing something new and different and what they consider to be unproven. And for the VR thing, what we were doing to set the stage on this is we were creating a virtual environment for participants to be able to move around in. So for a retail store, you could lay out the whole store differently or lay out the whole space differently and have people interact with that. For a hotel, you could build out a model room for a hotel concept without ever having to build a hotel, right? So there were all these kinds of things. And what we found was that they all thought it was very cool, but somebody had to take a chance on spending money on something that wasn't proven. In that instance, you need specialized equipment because it was very cumbersome to administer. We hauled this gear with us, and we had these satellite things and set it up in a big space. And it was hard to make the VR experience materials, things that people were responding to. It took a lot of time, a lot of money. And then ultimately, like I said, it was cool, but it wasn't really practical or accepted by researchers because it wasn't able to scale. Now, AR, or augmented reality, we're talking about here, has the benefit of being able to do it on people's mobile phones, which is scalable. And, you have the ability to be able to have people do it in their own environment, in their own homes, whereas we were going to have to bring people in. But you still have so I think that gives me a lot of optimism about the fact that this is going to be different than the VR thing. But you still have this idea about the client acceptance piece, right? The fact that the client has to take a chance on something, and then they still got to produce materials which are not these materials are not the ordinary or normal things that they would produce by their agency all the time, that kind of thing. So anyway, I'm very optimistic, but I do think that there are challenges, especially when you're trying to show a client how this can benefit them. I will say it's an easier sell so far on the AR than it was on the VR, so that's a good thing.
Sure. Yeah. And some of the reasons, I mean, you already sort of touched on the need for special equipment and the need to actually have someone in a specific physical location. But I wonder too, if like the use case actually plays a role in that, with creating a retail environment and looking for feedback on that, like the entire retail landscape has changed, even, pre-pandemic stuff. But, this shift to omni-channel and online shopping has been ongoing for a while. Like, I wonder if that has a factor, whereas, or plays a role in that being less viable of a methodology where, with AR, you're doing a lot more concept testing and new product innovation testing, which isn't really something that's going away or shifting in the same way that the retail landscape is.
Yeah, true. I mean, I think that one of the things you point out, obviously, and the pandemic brought to the fore is that it brought a lot of things forward that were already happening, right?
Yeah.
On shopping and everything else. And AR is becoming, I believe, more accepted because I know people that do a lot of shopping where they place themselves inside of the experience, right? Buying clothes, where you put the phone up and then takes images of your body, and then you're able to try on the clothes and see how they look on you. Those kinds of applications.
Yeah.
The thing that we did with I guess to share a little bit about what we did on this AR project specifically with Voxpopme was we have a global lawn care equipment manufacturer. It's a brand that everyone would know. And we did this new product concept. You mentioned product concepts, right? So they have a product concept for a corded leaf blower. So it's an electric corded leaf blower. And we ran it to compare. We ran some questions that did not have the augmented reality piece where people were just speaking to it. And then we ran things that did, in fact, show the prototype of the leaf blower in place and the dimensionality and scale. So they were able to go into their backyard or their front yard or their lawn and see this product and how it would look and how they would interact with it. And it made it very, I think, it made it a much richer experience to be able to get feedback from people this way. It was much richer, more realistic than just looking at an image or a diagram or words or hearing words that describe this to them, because they actually could see it and they could see it in their own environment. So that's what gives me hope on the AR thing, is becoming something that becomes more accepted, easier to deploy, richer than just showing someone or telling someone about something, and putting it in their own environment. So I think that those are all positive things contributing to the fact that this could take off.
Yeah, and you make such a good point. Like, people are becoming more used to that type of technology in other environments outside of giving feedback. I feel like I should wish everyone a happy Prime Day. It's Prime Day, for those of you who don't know. But I was looking today at, the deals, and I looked at a TV and it said, see if this TV is going to fit on your wall. Mm-hmm. And there was a button there for me to actually, take a picture of my wall and see if the specific TV I was looking at was going to fit in my space. And that, I honestly didn't really think anything of it when I saw it, because I'm so used to seeing stuff like that now with shopping. Like, there's, sure, people are trying on shoes through augmented reality or whatever. It's becoming really common. So for it to start showing up in a research environment is comfortable for respondents, I would imagine.
Well, comfortable for respondents, but also comfortable for clients, right? So if you're trying to explain this to a client and they're asking, well, what is this? I mean, the VR thing was an example, because it had promised that it was going to be something, but people just weren't accustomed to wearing headset. I mean, Google put all this money behind Google Glass, which was this augmented reality experience, right, that you wore. And they called it a project, but obviously it didn't have market acceptance enough for them to continue to make a product out of it. Right. But what's happened is, we all carry the devices, right? So we all have a computer in our pockets right here, and with a camera on it and the whole bit. And we don't have to have specialized equipment. We can do this. And as you say, it's the consumers or the respondents becoming more comfortable with it. But it's also, I think, the clients saying, oh, yeah, I know what that is. I get it. Mm-hmm. And that's a big deal for us, because I can try to explain stuff all day long to clients. But if they already have a frame of reference and they know, it's much easier, right? It's much easier for them to get it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, all you have to do is say, now this is a technology you're familiar with from outside. Here's how you can apply it.
Exactly.
And the benefits of doing so. So you mentioned in the work that you did on the corded leaf blower that you kind of did some side by side of with and without the augmented reality. Kind of what do you experience in the side by side comparison?
Well, I'm not sure it was an exact side by side, because the questions were different. So we were using traditional Voxpopme to get, it was feedback on what did they think of generally think of an electric leaf blower, right? Mm-hmm. So, people would say, well, I hate gasoline. I don't want to mess with that. The corded thing, it's environmentally friendly. The cord doesn't bother me. Or some people just said, the cord does bother me because I don't want to trip on the thing, and it's the hassle and where my outlets are, all those kinds of things, right? But then when we showed them the product in their own environment, in their lawn, or on their lawn, when I should say we didn't show it to them, we placed the object in the AR thing, and then they were seeing it, I guess, with their thing, right? So they're seeing it, and they're seeing the product, they're seeing the scale and dimensions of the product in their own environment. Then we got different feedback, and it wasn't dramatically different, but it was a refinement. It was more realistic, right? Because now it's not just a conceptual thing of what do you think about an electric leaf blower. It's like, what about this leaf blower, electric leaf blower, and how does this fit into, you know, what you think? And people would say, oh, I love the color. I really like the look of it. I can see how it. I can now see how it is in terms of how big it is, just the right size, or too big or too small, because they were able to get that perspective.
It's such a difference to, you know, be able to actually put the product into somebody's physical space.
Yeah.
Because just the, you know, a description of it, as you say, or a picture of it doesn't give you that same sense of, you know, the scale or being able to zoom in and out and, you know, really like check something out. It's just that much more realistic, right?
Yeah, for sure, right? I mean, it lands somewhere between this, you know, describing something to someone in a theoretical way. Look at this photograph, look at this illustration, hear these words, and the actual physical. I'm holding the product, touching the product, using the product. I mean, that's the other end of the spectrum. So this, and that's not always practical to do because it might not, the product might not even exist yet, right? So this is the in-between part that gives you a more realistic understanding of what it is you're trying to get feedback on.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, earlier you mentioned you primarily are working with Fortune 1000, 2000, 5000 companies. What kind of companies do you recommend would be kind of the best fit for using AR in market research, and for what applications?
You know, I don't think it's particularly a size company thing. I think any company that's got a tangible product, so that's an obvious one. Anyone who wants to get a reaction to something in a more realistic way than just showing them a diagram, or especially if it's something brand new that there's not a frame of reference for. I mean, people know what a leaf blower looks like. Now, maybe not an electric leaf blower because not everybody maybe has seen one or interacted with one. But you know, there's less imagination needed from the respondent to be able to do that. So, uh, you know, I think that anyone who makes a physical product, any CPG, but also it might also be used in environments. I was mentioning this virtual reality thing that was too cumbersome to be able to administer. But if you can do augmented reality and send someone to a physical location, for instance, send them to a grocery store, send them to a bank, send them to a whatever, a pharmacy, a hotel, and then they can see objects there through augmented reality that don't actually exist in reality. I think that would also be a good case. So you know, it has to do with, does someone need to get as realistic of a picture as possible in something that's physical and dimensional? That's obviously the that's the essence, I believe, of it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think we've seen some great success with some of those earlier stage prototypes of products where, you know, you wouldn't necessarily create the physical and put it into a focus group room, you know, really early stage that wasn't getting tested in that way previously. Like that's a great use case for AR. I hadn't really thought about it, you know, actually like, you know, it's one thing to see a product in your home, but to actually bring that product onto a store shelf or something like that is an interesting thought as well. A lot of really good applications for package testing also. Maybe the product isn't new, but testing language on the product, or, you know, nutrition labels on cereal boxes and things like that, making sure people are understanding them. There's just so many different ways that, you know, we've seen some companies leverage the AR in really interesting ways and getting some really cool insight.
Yeah, you bring up a good one, right? Iterating faster. So I'm making a cool thing, and I've got a conceptual idea of it, but I want to get faster and faster. Like, it's probably a lot easier to make this AR image that I can then test than it is to make the product. And you know, in the VR thing, I'll give the example, right? We have clients who build hotels, and these guys they told me what the cost of building 2 model rooms. So their idea was, hey, instead of having to build rooms and then keep restaging it and screwing with it, messing, you know, keep changing things about editing, what if we could just build these model rooms in a VR setting and then we could iterate faster, right? So if you think of AR, if you put them in a white box room, and as someone was holding it and looking around the room, they would see these things, that could be an application. So I do think that there's a lot of application, and you had one that I hadn't thought of, packaging research, where languages or those kinds of things. What are some of the most interesting things you guys have seen? Not to turn the questions on you, but yeah, you have great examples.
Yeah, we've done some interesting internal tests. We've done some interesting stuff with customers. Certainly, the package testing one was a really interesting one. The technology is so impressive. I mean, for me, as like somebody who's not very savvy when it comes to that kind of coding and engineering and designing these models, when I first started to see how detailed these AR products were, that you could really, like, on your phone, get in and zoom in and read the fine print on a cereal box and spin it around. And, I was just blown away. So, that's been really interesting to see. When we were kind of early on in our testing phase, we were testing with mostly consumer products, things that can kind of fit on your counter or fit in your living room and something like that. And somebody said, can we do a car? And so that was one of the big tests that our engineering team undertook. And, actually putting a full-size car in someone's driveway was really interesting to see. And, I think to be able to kind of then, like, get in close and look in the windows and see what's going on inside, it really depends on the model that you've got, right? The AR drawing, but there's some interesting stuff that I've seen.
That brings up a good point too. Yeah, I think that there are lots of, the car thing is a great example of something, very interesting and more sophisticated. One of the, in addition to client reluctance, one of the things that we found as a barrier is, like I said, the time and the cost. So if someone's, it depends on how far along they are in the product development process, but one of the roadblocks is just being able to get the stimuli from them and to get it in a way that is really usable and at the level that someone wants. And because the researchers themselves aren't usually driving the bus on that, right? You need if it's an R&D team or a product development team, you have to get their cooperation and co-opt them into this whole thing. Otherwise, you're spinning your wheels. It sounds like a great idea. We really want to do it, but that's a very practical implication that one would think would be no big deal, but oftentimes it's a big holdup or a big roadblock.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's the biggest challenge, especially before it becomes more of a mainstream methodology that people are really comfortable with and accustomed to, is especially in some of these really massive CPG companies, people might not know who to go to in terms of, like, who owns that, that drawing or that AR model, that 3D model of the new product or prototype that's being developed. And, oftentimes we do see, that's a topic in the industry, the democratization of research. Marketers are doing research, innovation teams are doing research. And so if that's being led by the team that's developing the product, then it's a lot easier to know where to find that. But you're so right. A lot of times the researchers don't necessarily know where to get that stimulus to then put in the study. So that is an area of friction that we need to help support our customers with.
And it's funny you say the democratization of research. So I never hear anybody say we're going to democratize corporate finance. We're going to democratize accounting. We're going to democratize engineering. Right. And I think it's one of these very, very terrible things. Everybody says, "Oh, well, you've got a computer, you can do research, right? You've got a computer, there's some software out there, go do it." And we oftentimes see people doing total garbage stuff. And I don't think that they intend to do that. I just don't. I know they don't have the expertise to be able to do it. You would never tell your engineering guys, "Hey, go democratize. Everybody's an engineer now. Yeah. Everybody's a CFO now." This doesn't happen in other parts of the business. So it's very frustrating, because I understand people have a lot of questions and they want to get answers faster. But I think it's really does a disservice not only to the research, but it also does it to the service to the companies, because if you put garbage in, you get garbage out. What are you really getting? And that's where you make bad decisions, really bad decisions.
Yeah, I totally hear that. And I can relate as a marketer because everybody always thinks they know how to do marketing. But nobody's trying to, do the engineering if they don't have the expertise. So I totally get what you're saying. I think what's so important then is like as a marketer or as a researcher is to really collaborate so closely with those teams that do want to do stuff themselves. Here we go. We're going down a democratization rabbit.
Yeah, it's a whole nother side of things.
That's totally fine. But
that's the next podcast.
Right, exactly. We could do another episode on that. But I've seen some really incredible corporate researchers say, I want my marketing team to feel like they can run some questions. And as long as they know, the line of like, what can they run on their own? What should they come to us with? Like, let's collaborate on a regular basis and make sure we're all kind of on the same page and doing things the right way. Like there are certain areas where, marketers can ask a question to consumers, but it's when you're getting into a point of trying to make major company decisions on really big research initiatives that there's a level of expertise that is required.
Yeah.
There's an insights team, right? But yeah, totally. It's very different from finance or engineering or any of that stuff. People don't tend to think they can do that stuff on their own.
And I would argue that really most people shouldn't be trying to do research on their own because they're screwing it up.
Yeah.
And they're coming to false conclusions or faulty conclusions. I should say faulty conclusions. If they get it right, it may oftentimes be just luck more than methodologically sound way of getting there. So
sure,
that's a whole different episode.
And it's a different
back to AR.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were talking about how do people kind of get started, like how do you get the required files or models or things like that you need, and how do you get started to kind of get projects like this set up?
Well, the first thing you do if you're a Fortune 5,000 client is you call us, right? You call the Olinger Group. If you're an agency, then I guess you call you guys. So the getting it started thing is we have lots of tools in our toolbox, right? And so we look to figure out which tool is the right tool. And if someone were to come to us, as happened with this lawn care equipment manufacturer, and we said, we have this tool, we have this thing, and they were willing to play ball and go along with it, and they were able to get us the imagery, the files, the three-dimensional files that they had to be able to do it, and it worked very well. But I think it all started, what do you want to, I always tell people, I need to know two things. What do you want to know, number one? Not what do you want, people come and say, oh, we need to do focus groups, we need to do a survey. I'm like, tell me what you want to know first, right?
Yeah.
And then tell me how you're going to use it. Like those are the two essential questions. If you can't answer those, we got a problem. And you can talk about focus groups and surveys and in-depth interviews and Voxpopme and whatever, ethnographies and intercepts, and that's all great. But like, I really understand what it is you want to do. And you'd be surprised how often people can't tell us exactly what they really want to do. And if I can't get a clear answer what someone wants to do, how am I supposed to help them? So I think that it starts with, using someone who's an expert like us, who can, and we're not the only ones, but we're the best ones. I'll put a plug in to say, and figuring out if it's the right tool for the job. And then you go from there, right? And then you come up with what are the questions you want to ask, how you're going to put the stimuli, what instructions you want to give respondents, making sure you recruit the right people. I mean, all the blocking and tackling things that you have to do to have a good outcome and to do research properly, I think is the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like, I guess if you asked that question, like, what is it that you want to know? What are you trying to learn? What are you gonna do with that information? What would give me an example of an answer to that question that would lead you to say, this is a good candidate for an augmented reality study?
So, if someone came to us and they said, we have this new product, it's a physical, like I said, it's a physical thing, or this new product concept. I mean, we were doing something for a building materials company recently. And here's a good example. We didn't use AR, but I'll give you a good example. So we did, it was with builders, building contractors, energy raters, and insulation installers. And they had this concept. It's something new. It doesn't exist on the market yet. So we did these IDIs and we showed them drawings or diagrams of it. And they were well done. But then, there were these questions that came out of it. And then we did a second round 6 months later. And what they had done is made videos of the actual thing, right? So we played these 3 or 4 videos in between asking the questions. We redid a few people that we'd done before, and then the other ones were new people. So what I noticed from one to the other is the more realistic it got, the better the feedback, the questions and such changed. So if someone came to us with something and said, hey, we have this thing, and it's hard to describe, or even if it's easy to describe, but we really want to show people, that's the trigger, I think, right? It's being able to show people something even though it doesn't exist in real life. Yeah. And like I said, the diagrams in the first one, the second one, they made a video. In the video, they actually put together something. They made a prototype of the material, but they showed the material being used, being installed, and you could tell the light bulbs were going off and people totally got it, and their questions changed. It got that much richer, that much better, and it pushed the ball that much farther for them to make a decision on it.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Like that realism is so important. It just gets people, like you said, it just clicked. People got it when they saw it.
Got it. They got it the first time, sort of.
Yeah.
But I don't think they fully got it as well as they did the second time.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, you said earlier on in the show, when I asked about the future of AR, that the jury is out. So if I had to force you to give it right now, today, do you think that this is a trend in the insight space that's here to stay?
If I had to make a yes or no decision, I would say I think it's something that's going to be a tool that's going to be mainstreamed and used. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's going to be, or at least at this, it's unclear as to whether it's going to take off and be widely used at this point in time, right? I mean, it just is, as you said about, getting more used to it, your television example, my clothing wardrobe example, I think that as more of that's out there, then it can take off. I mean, you look at this device by Apple was introduced in 2007. I was using a version of it from 2001, and it was a Samsung thingy, and it was based on the Palm Pilot operating system, right? I mean, old school, but it did a lot of the same things, and then all of a sudden it went like a rocket ship when someone introduced another device. So whether or not AR is going to take off like a rocket ship or always be a niche tool in the product product toolbox, that's the part I don't know. I don't think it's going to go away unless someone comes up with something even more realistic, even better, that can take its place. And it's competing with lots of other methodologies, and it's competing, to be fair, and it's competing, a lot of preconceived notions on how things are supposed to be, and it's competing with the fact that some things, even though you do AR, you still need to touch and feel and taste and smell, right? There are other sensory things that we have to bring into play that it's competing with. But all that said, I do think that it's here to stay and it's going to be around. It's just about how much market acceptance it gets.
Sure. So I think what I'm hearing is I need to talk to our product team about some kind of scratch and sniff hologram.
Smelly vision, right?
Product testing, yeah. But you make a good point about the iPhone, right? Like, I mean, we're still having conversations about mobile research. When the iPhone was released in 2007. I mean, we're not always the quickest to adopt new technology in the research space, let's be honest, but
it's not unique to researchers, though. I mean, we talk to clients all over the place with lots of different things, and it takes a while for that hockey. Sometimes it takes a while for that hockey. Sometimes it doesn't take so long, right? I mean, but sometimes it does. And there's a lot of trial and error and failure in between. I mean, the thing that I had in 2001, that device, it was basically a Palm Pilot with a phone slapped on it. It was a Frankenstein thing.
Yeah.
It had limited capability, but it still had the ability to be able to look up contact and to dial from the thing and all this kind of stuff that was back in the Dynotech phone days where it just had a keypad. So, it took some more elegant design, some design thinking, some iteration, and getting once it got some adoption, like a rocket ship, right?
Sure.
So that happens, I think, in research as it does in others. So I'm not so bearish on the fact that we're all so behind and everything else. I think that the market dictates where we go, and the market dictates. This is why I say the jury's out. It's all great to have cool and interesting things. I remember when neuro stuff was all cool and interesting, and it does work. Problem is that no market acceptance.
Yeah.
All right. I hope that. I hope. I guess we'll be talking about this at some point in the future and see if either of us is right about it.
I know we're going to have to do a look back and say, was the prediction correct in a year, or 2 years, or whatever? Well, this has been great. I really appreciate you coming on the show today and having this chat.
Jenn, thank you so much for having us. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about it and share our experiences. And, we're looking forward to finding clients who do have these needs and for using this tool to be able to help them with it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for listening and for joining us today. Don't forget to rate and review our show wherever you listen to your podcasts. Later this week, I'll be joined by Khalil Vicioso of Insights in Color. We will see you then.